Yeah, I don't have to clap for that. It's okay. Guys, I was thinking about it this week, and hey, can we bring up page 5 for it? Just kind of thinking about this week, just this idea, and I was thinking about, it'd be cool to play Jenga or whatever, and this isn't actually Jenga, this is knockoff Jenga. It's just called Tumbling Tower. It's a thing. It's like in the office. I was like, oh, it's cool. But there's a lot of ways to build a life. And I think a lot of us, we do things very differently, right? We have different personalities, we have different interests, different talents, different things that we do, and different ways that we do it. But honestly, kind of the core stuff and the ways that we build a life are all pretty similar in a lot of ways. A lot of the elements that we all incorporate to this idea of, I want to have the best life I can have, right? I want to have a life that is successful, a life that's good, a life that makes me happy or whatever. And a lot of the same things go into a lot of our lives. Like, for instance, relationships. I think relationships are kind of the, maybe the core ingredient to a lot of our lives and the way that we think about building a life. We got to have our relationships, we got to have our family, we got to have our friends, right? We got to have the people that we kind of surround ourselves with. Some of these people we choose, some of these people we don't choose. You don't really choose your family necessarily. You were kind of born into it, or however that worked for you. But you choose your friends. Eventually, you'll choose somebody that you're going to date if you're not already, or somebody that you're going to marry. All right, those are all choices that we make. Those are all very important things that we choose. And even, social media even kind of goes in this, right? Our Twitter and Instagram and all those things, like, these are all based on relationships. These are all based on, like, who am I following? Who's following me? What am I seeing from people's lives? What am I showing people about my life? All right, it's all kind of about relationships as we start to build these lives. What about even education? What about education? I think that's part of a good life, right? A lot of us, maybe we don't like to go to school, but I think we would all agree that it's good to learn things, right? It's good to know, it's good to have some knowledge, and none of us want to grow up not knowing anything. So education, I think, is an important part of building a good life. Maybe there are certain subjects that you like, or certain subjects that you don't like. I don't know. We all have different things that we enjoy. Who likes math? Who's going to like math? Okay, some of y'all like math. I hate math. Who likes, like, literature, reading, like reading books, writing? Who likes to write? Some of y'all like to write. What about history? What about food? Everybody's like, I like food. Eating, maybe not lunchroom food at the school, but who has good lunchroom food at your school? Nobody. Hey, Alexis, that's it. Cousins? I've seen cousins' food. Michelle Obama made it disgusting. That's funny. Okay. Well, look. Still, I think what we do in school and the education that we're getting, and all those things, I think they go into building a pretty good life, and I think we would all agree on that. Just in some way that we're building that kind of life. And what about, maybe physical necessities, right? We just mentioned food. That's definitely a physical necessity. Some of y'all just really enjoy eating. I think we all enjoy eating in some ways. But obviously, water, shelter, love. Is love kind of a necessity of life? I think you can live without love, but you probably can't live well without love, right? But there's certainly some necessities that we all have to kind of throw in there for to make our lives better, or even just to survive in this world. Just as we're building this life, just kind of making it nice and neat, and kind of fixing things and making sure that we understand that I need to have these things, these building blocks, to have the kind of life that I want to live. What about fun? I think fun's important. Y'all think fun's important? I think fun's important. Fun's a good thing to have in our life. We all want to have fun, and sometimes we have fun in different ways. Who plays sports? Raise your hand. Play sports. Just have a hobby that you like to do. Maybe it's art, maybe it's music, maybe it's any number of things. We all enjoy different things. Maybe it's just listening to music. Maybe it's playing music. Maybe it's writing music. Social life, again, with relationships. The social life is important. We want to have friendships. We want to be able to do things outside of our family and outside of our home and outside of school, and be able to actually, hang out with people at different times and do those kind of things. Those things are all important, building a life in that kind of way. What about maybe even the entertainment world, like, what kind of artists do you listen to? What kind of music do you enjoy? Do you go to, maybe you really like concerts. Maybe that's entertaining to you. Maybe you just like to watch TV. Maybe Netflix. Some of y'all binge watch, Netflix like hours on end over the weekend. Some of y'all do that like all Saturday long, right? Anybody ever have that happen to you? Like you get sucked into like the Netflix vacuum. You even know what just happened. Like you just have this idea, like I'm gonna watch Netflix. I'm just gonna watch like 2 episodes of The Office, and then before you know it, you just watch like 4 seasons, and it's like Saturday night, and you haven't slept in 3 days, and you're like, how did this even? I haven't even gotten out of my bed. I got like crumbs all over the place. It's ridiculous. Yeah, Netflix can suck you in, but that's all kind of part of fun, right? And I don't know if that's necessarily building a great life, but it's to us, it's entertainment, it's fun. What about hopes and dreams? What about imagination? Like even the plans that we have. I think those are important things when we're building a life. Just to have some ideas about what we want to do with life, how we're going to spend our lives. Look at our future. Look at what's going on. What about spirituality? I think that maybe for everybody that's not that important as far as like spiritual things, or we talk about God, talk about going to church, or whatever it is that you may believe or what people may believe. But spiritual, realities are realities, and I only have 2 blocks here on top. But spiritual stuff I think is important to a lot of us. A lot of people would agree on that. That's a necessity of our lives to have this. So we kind of put this all together, and we get this life, right? You kind of have this life going on, and for some of us it looks different. The blocks are arranged a little bit differently. Maybe they're even different styles or different shapes or different colors. Everybody's life looks differently, right? But for the most part, we all kind of build it this way. The Israelites in the Bible, the Israelites had this kind of idea about what their lives should look like, the way that God designed their lives to look. Okay? So as we get throughout the Old Testament, we've been going through this series, Continuum. And last week we got to this place where we talked about God's faithfulness. How faithful God was to the Israelites over and over and over again. No matter what they would do, no matter how much sin they would have in their lives, no matter how many times they would turn away from God, He would continue to show up and He would continue to bless them. Well, right now where we're at is, I'm going to skip ahead really from the time of the end of the Old Testament all the way to the beginnings of the New Testament. And really what's going on is they were in captivity for a long time because of their foolishness, because of their sin. They went into captivity. They were slaves. And God kind of brought them up out of that. He saved them from that slavery. They got back into Jerusalem. We talked about Nehemiah a while back with the building of the walls and all that. So they built their walls back up. They kind of had their city back. And then they started to kind of set up a really strict religion for the Israelite community. And they started to have these ideas about what it looks like to build the kind of life that God wants us to have. If we do these things exactly this way, and if we make it really nice and really neat and keep it really clean as much as we can with our religion, then maybe God will approve of how we're living our lives. That's kind of what they decided and how they figured it out. But God really always had a different idea. God always had a different idea for what it would look like for them. In fact, even one of the prophets came to them. This is hundreds of years before God's plan would really be fleshed out. This prophet named Isaiah, he came to them and he said in Isaiah 28:16, he said, "Look, I'm going to lay for you guys a cornerstone who's going to be a foundation for your lives." This cornerstone that I'm talking about, this thing that I'm talking about is going to come, and this thing is going to be a foundation for how you're living your life. And in fact, this something turned out to be a someone. It was a person that God was going to send Himself into the world. And I don't know if y'all know this, but if you've been here the last 4 weeks of Continuum, there's one name that I have not yet said in this whole series. I haven't yet said it, and I've been very intentional about not saying this name, and I'm going to say it today. What's the name?
Isaiah.
Jesus. The name is Jesus. I haven't said it. It's been breaking my heart because, obviously we're all about Jesus in here, but I haven't said it because we haven't gotten to that part of the story yet, but we're there today. So this guy shows up on the scene, and his name is Jesus. And Jesus is different. Jesus is a lot different than everybody else. He is a rabbi. He's a teacher. That's what a rabbi is. But he's got some different things going on. And people kind of know there are rumors going on about Jesus, like about his mom and how she had him, and his mom and his dad's relationship when they had him. Like, obviously they weren't married yet, but she had Jesus. So everybody kind of picked on Jesus about how he grew up. His mom and his dad seemed to have a relationship that wasn't pure because they had him before they were married. But everybody else, some other people claim, well, no, Joseph isn't his father at all. He actually has no earthly father. Mary was a mother, but she was a virgin, and everybody's kind of confused about where he came from. They know he's a carpenter's son. Joseph was a carpenter. Jesus was a carpenter, so he kind of grew up poor. He wasn't that important in the society, but then one day he starts growing up and teaching people different ways to live their lives. And he kind of shows up on the scene, and people start to follow him around and listen to things that he's saying. And all the other Jewish guys are just thinking, this guy's a wacko. Like, he doesn't even know what he's talking about. He doesn't even have an earthly father. You know what I mean? And he's poor, and he shouldn't even be coming and teaching these things, but he is. And then Jesus shows up, and he starts to teach them these things. Well, there's this long sermon that Jesus gives. And I'm not going to go through the whole sermon. I'm actually going to wrap up here pretty quickly. But there's this long sermon that Jesus gives. It's called the Sermon on the Mount. It's Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And in this sermon, as Jesus kind of begins his ministry in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, he sits all these people down, and he kind of gets up on the hillside. He begins to teach them things that they have never heard before, ever. He begins to say things like this: blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are you if you are persecuted because of righteousness. That's what Jesus tells them. He's teaching them all these things. He starts to tell them, you know what? Yeah, you shouldn't murder people, but you also shouldn't be angry with people, because that's the same as murdering them. And people are going, what? And he starts to go, you know what? Yeah, you shouldn't sleep around, but you also shouldn't lust after people, because that's the same as sleeping around. And they're going, what? You're crazy. Like, he starts to teach them all these different things that are different ways to live. And he's actually pointing a lot less at the outside physical stuff and a lot more at their hearts. He starts to point at their hearts and go, you know what? You've always heard you should live this way, but I'm telling you, you really need to check your heart and live maybe a different kind of way. And they start to hear these things, and I just don't know if people really know what to do with what Jesus is saying. But then he says this, and this is kind of our key passage for today. Okay? He says this. This is Matthew 7, at the very end of that sermon. He says this: therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house. You could change the word house for the word life. Who built his life on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Through the whole Old Testament, we see a God who is so good to his people, over and over and over again. Like I said a minute ago, he's just so faithful. He keeps showing up for them. They keep screwing it up. He keeps showing up time and time and time again. And the truth is, no matter what he did for them, and no matter how hard they tried to eventually start to build their lives the way that they wanted to build their lives, they could never measure up to him. And we understand that, don't we? No matter what you guys do, no matter what I do, no matter how good you try to be, no matter how much you try to listen to your parents, or how much you try to make it to church, or how much you do anything that you do, you will never measure up to perfection, because that's what God is. Right? We just can't. We can't measure up to that, no matter how well I think I built my house. But then here comes Jesus, this man who claims to be something more than a man. Like, he claims to be that. And even his followers start to talk about the fact that he might be more than just a guy, more than just a man who's shown up, more than just a teacher, more than just a rabbi. And the truth is, he's actually the main character in this whole plan. He's the main character of this whole continuum. He's the main character of everything God has been doing. He's showing up and he starts to teach things a little bit different. And he actually has given them something different to look at. And in fact, Jesus came as an answer to all of this stuff. So the last 4 weeks we've been talking about this whole story that God's been writing, and he created everything perfectly, but we messed it up. We fell. We screwed it up in our sin. But God promised to be with them, and he was so faithful in keeping that promise. And time again, we keep screwing it up, don't we? We keep messing it up. But then Jesus shows up, and he actually gives us a foundation, something that we can finally look at, something that we can finally set our eyes on, an example of a way to live. And he says, you know what? If you build your house on this, you'll never fall. But if you build your house on everything else that you've been trying to build your house on, it's going to come crashing down. And that's the way he ends that sermon. That he wants us to understand that there's really two options of the way that we can build a life in this world. there's really two options. One, you can build it on Jesus, the rock, the foundation, as Isaiah said, a firm foundation on which we can build our lives. You can build your life on that. You can listen to Jesus. You can follow Jesus. You can hear his teachings and put them into practice like he said, because that's who he is. He is the perfect example of the life that God meant for us to have. And you can build your life on him. You can set your life on him, and you will never, ever, ever fall. Or you can set your life on any number of things in this world, whether it be, I'm going to build my life and it's going to be the foundation of my life is going to be my friends, or the foundation of my life is going to be entertaining myself, or the foundation of my life is going to be what I hope and what I dream about, or my plans for the future. The foundation of my life is going to be my opinions or my thoughts or anything else. And Jesus made it very clear that if your foundation is not on the rock of him and his words, that's it. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for loving us. Thank you for giving us Jesus. Help us to stand on him. I pray this in his name. Amen. All right, you guys go to groups.